All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, dude?
Oh, sad that it snowed. Like, boat's still out, driveway covered in snow. It's sad, but I'm like holding out hope for 1 or 2 more days of crushing smallies here in the next week or so. So pray for warm weather.
You're sad? You're one of those that you're sad when you see the snow come?
Yeah, because my boat stays outside all summer. So I'm like, oh, that means I got to put it away and make sure it's drained so lower unit doesn't freeze. Other than that, I love snow. Like steelhead fishing has been incredible. So it's awesome.
Dude, my fiance and I were talking about this. I think it was Saturday that we had our first snow up here in New York. And we had the same conversation. Like, she does not like the snow very much, but it's like Christmas for me when we have our first snow. I absolutely love it. And especially when you mix like a nice blizzard with a big fat smallmouth, there really isn't a better feeling for us Northerners. And I'm sure,
except for you went and caught baby smallmouth.
Yeah. But it's gonna suck too. I hope we don't have ice for at least till January, mid-January. I mean, it kind of looks that way, although it's kind of been getting cold fast up here.
Yeah, Erie's still warm. It's above 50 degrees, except for we have like insane wind for the last 7 days. So everything's mud now. So it's going to take 5 to 6 days for Erie and Buffalo just to settle down a little bit before we can even get out.
Apparently, Joseph's on my sicko for enjoying snow.
I love snow. Like, I grew up steelhead fishing, so steelhead snow is like the perfect equation. So I love it. It's just like now that I guide for bass as well, I'm like sad because that means the boat is going away.
Yeah, I hear that, dude. Well, a couple things to dive into here before we get our guest on. For folks that are tuning in, probably already know that we have Mr. Brandon Palanik joining us tonight, and we're pretty excited for tonight's show. But before we break into that, I think first things first, we got to give a shout out to Christine Fisher for winning the Hobie BOS Tournament of Champions, racking home 35K. And that's big. I think it's big for the industry, but it's also big for her and her career. And paving the way for a lot of female anglers. So it's a pretty cool deal on multiple fronts. And got the opportunity to chat with her a little bit briefly. And it's pretty cool to see kind of when you talk to anybody, obviously, that wins, just hearing the raw emotion, especially so quick, like after they won, it's a pretty cool thing. And then also, I think one thing we want to talk about really quick too, that we were talking offline together, and also Brandon a little bit, was the Bassmaster Redfish tournament, which I'm sure
looked like
a lot of people
so much fun.
Yeah, and a lot of guys, it was kind of cool how they structured it with a bunch of the elite boys, because we were talking, Zaldane was in it, Hudnall, Patrick Walters, Matt Herron, Mark Menendez, Trait Zaldane, like. They get a cool mix of bass and redfish folk, and it kind of made for a little cool showing. From Zaldane catching one on a mag draft to Patrick Walters almost dropping all the fish at weigh-in. It was a cool deal.
Oops.
Yeah.
So where do you think, looked like a riot.
Before we bring Brandon on here, where do you think that they're trying to take the whole Redfish Cup thing to?
More like I don't know if they're going to do like a redfish. Like, I feel like they're trying to bring into like a redfish team derby, and they might try to integrate like Bassmaster pros and like top open guys and move it into that field to integrate the two, just broaden the horizons to a wider audience. I think it's a good move because the two go hand in hand. They eat the same lures. They kind of act the same way. Like if you watch some of the old classics on the Louisiana Delta, guys are flipping reeds with a jig, and one cast will catch a largemouth, the next cast will catch like a 25-inch redfish. So like they're just trying to maybe mix them kind of somehow together, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with it.
Heck yeah. Let's get the opinion of someone who fishes the elites here and bring on our guest, Mr. Brandon Palanik.
Yeah.
What's going on, dude?
What's going on, guys?
Good.
What's your take on this Bassmaster Redfish Cup? Where do you see it going?
I don't know where it'll go. I'm sure they're going to do it again because it looked like it was a ton of fun. It was cool to just watch like those different techniques and stuff mesh together, right? And like see the hardcore bass guys and the hardcore redfish guys kind of mesh together and see how they feed off of each other and work together to figure out, different species. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of directions they can go with it, right? They can turn it into an entire series. It just gives another platform for Bassmaster to promote, and all the connections they have with Fox. They're able to take that and transport that over to the saltwater world as well, right? And
Yeah.
we're all anglers together, and the more people we have fishing, whether it's freshwater or saltwater, is better for everybody. And just because their name is Bassmaster doesn't mean that they're not all about promoting other fish species as well.
Heck
So
yeah.
I think it's a cool thing, and just the beginning of hopefully many redfish tournaments to come.
Yeah, I know. We've had him on the show before. His name's Blake Smith from down in Florida. He actually was like a hair close to qualifying for the elites this year. He's actually a former like redfish pro. Like he used to fish the whole redfish league down in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Florida. Yeah, it would be kind of cool to see that happen and see if there's a guy who can do like you see John Cox doing multiple circuits, and then a guy does multiple circuits but for two different species.
That would be crazy.
That
A
would
guy
be.
like win the championship, like redfish championship, walleye championship, and the classic in 1 year or something.
The
Just
legend status.
yeah.
The triple
Like,
crown.
Yeah, exactly.
that would be one thing tough to like top in anyone's career. It's like how do you get to the top of 3 individual platforms? Like that's just insane.
Yeah, that would be gnarly. But dude, so before we get too deep into the show here, everyone that's new to the show, we like to throw it back to the beginning where everything has started.
The roots.
And with that being said, we're kind of curious on how it all started for you. You know, going back to the first bass catch. Who got you started fishing?
Freezing.
What's that? You got us?
Sorry, I might be freezing up. The one bad
windstorm.
part about living in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, and windstorms is that I don't have that great a service out here. Like the only way that I have Wi-Fi is either satellite or the hotspot on my phone. So
Uh-oh.
it's subpar at best. But I think I caught that and who got me started. And it was a family friend of ours. Originally, my mom was the one that took me out fishing and taking me out backpacking into mountain lakes and stuff around Idaho. And then it was a family friend, Jeremy Tripp, that fished local regional tournament stuff. And he's the one that first took me out on a bass boat and introduced me to the tournament side, because at that point before then, I didn't even know that you could target a specific species. Like I just went fishing to get a bite. I didn't really care what it was from. And then from that day forward, really all I cared about catching was a bass.
Yeah. So was he kind of your route into like getting your first bass boat, starting fishing your first tournament, like, and kind of getting that whole timeline started?
Yeah, he was definitely the one that I guess originally fueled the fire, right? Because he was the access point for me to understand, different techniques early on, understand that there were things even called bass fishing tournaments and that you could compete. And I was always a competitive little kid anyways. And so, and I loved the outdoors, and it gave me the opportunity to mesh those two things together. And, I started fishing just kind of local club with him early on. And, the cool thing when I look back at it is that it wasn't like he was a 45-year-old guy taking an 8-year-old kid. He was in his low 20s taking an 8-year-old kid. So it'd be like pretty much like a college kid grabbing a kid in elementary school and taking him out fishing and showing him the ropes and things like that. And that's how I got started. And then I started branching off and fishing some of the local stuff by myself when I was 14. One of my buddies that was my age, I kind of got him introduced to bass fishing. He started to fall in love with it. His mom ended up, I don't remember if she won a slot machine or what. She won at the casino and won some money at the casino and ended up buying us a little 16-foot bass tracker with a 25 horse. And we started fishing tournaments out of that. Because before that, me and him would take like a little aluminum boat out and we'd go out every day during the summer. We couldn't drive then, but his mom would drive us to the lake. She couldn't back a trailer down, so we'd have to back the trailer down, pull it out, and then she would drive home and come back and pick us up when it got dark. And then, you know, at 14, we started fishing by ourselves out of that little tracker. And then I started fishing the Federation, or what's now the Bass Nation. I started fishing that at 16, and ended up getting a Ranger at that time. So I had a $30,000 boat, and I had a $1,500 truck that I paid cash for.
Phenomenal.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
It's a great way to start.
Priorities.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting from this story is that gambling is good. So go gamble to get your first boat.
That's all we are. Is we're just a bunch of water gamblers. That's all we are.
This is true. Well, dude, obviously, I think everyone knows, and especially because you just walked us through it, how getting through to the elites, through the nation, and I think a lot of folks know that about you and your career. And now that you've seen a bunch of different routes pop up for folks to try to make it to the elites, you know, now that you have college, you have the opens, the nation, you know, now you're a veteran now, so you've gotten a chance to kind of look back, see how different people make it. Like, after kind of analyzing that, do you think that there's like a best route, if you could, you know, put a finger on it, of a way to get into the Elite Series?
I would say the best route is whichever one suits your situation. Every angler is, you know, geographically located differently, you know, set up financially differently. And so it really just depends on what your situation lends itself to, right? I was a young kid, didn't have a lot of money, had to work to support my habit, and I didn't have time to travel to the opens, didn't have money to fish the opens, for one, and two, I had to work enough just to fish the stuff around here and paid the bills, to where really the Federation was the only option for me. Right? I knew that I had to make it, and it took me 7 years of fishing that before I qualified. So it wasn't like I fished it 1 year, made it, and then qualified for the elites. I had been fishing the Federation for 7 years before I won the national championship. And, you know, but then there may be some guys that are right in the heart of it, and one of the opens goes to their home lake that they grew up fishing, and, you know, maybe every tournament's within a couple 100 miles of their house. That's a lot more financially feasible, you know, or it's a 35, 40-year-old guy that's a little bit more financially stable that can take some time off. And so I don't think there's a best route just to say, like, this is what you need to go do if you want to make it, because everyone's got a different situation. Right. I will say that I think the guys that do eventually make it through the Federation are pretty hardcore guys, because it's a long, long road to get there. And a lot of times once they get there, they've went through a lot of different bodies of water, and they've kind of proved themselves. And so there's not one way that's better than the other, you know. And now college, you can make it to the Classic, but you can't make it to the elites. But there's no doubt, you look at the roster that's on the elites now, or fishing the opens, and guys that consistently catch them, a lot of them come through the college program.
Right. That's a good point.
I think what helps the college program so much is a lot of those multi-day events that they fish, they have like 200-300 boats in them. So they know how to adapt and fish 200 field tournaments like the Opens. So they already have a step ahead. They're a step ahead of the competition in that regards from your local guy who steps in.
And it gives them a really good platform.
Yeah.
Right. It gives them national exposure while they're still going to school. I mean, I had to choose, like I came to a crossroads between college and fishing and had to choose one or the other. Now you can go to college and get a scholarship to help pay for it. And, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And, and especially in the quality that we have. And I just think like the learning curve is so much shorter now than it was before because of the amount of information that's out there.
Right. Yeah. And we're going to kind of touch on that a little bit later in the episode when we start talking about, building a brand in the fishing industry. But we kind of want to break into talking about being versatile as an angler. But I think, Andrew, didn't you have a question before we break into that segment?
Oh, are you talking about the first ever Bassmaster Classic?
Yeah.
So it's one of my favorites. So 2011, you qualified from the nation, right, to go to the Classic. Yeah. How did it feel to fish basically alongside with Kevin Van Dam and Aaron Martins through the Classic and that whole field, that first tournament?
Super humbling. Some of my best memories to date in my career are from that event.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's just because I was so new and I was taking everything in. Yeah. And the fact that I was new, a lot less people wanted to talk to me, right? And so I didn't have as many distractions with all of the outside stuff that happens at the Classic. And so I was able to just be there and, watch. And it was amazing being able to line up to those guys, just next to those guys, take off with those guys. That was a culmination of like my entire life, right? Like everything that I had dedicated my time to and my money to was coming true in that moment. That was the first event that I had fished against those guys. I hadn't fished an elite event or anything yet. So all of the elite events followed the Classic. So that was like my first professional tournament ever. It was like that stage. And it was mind blowing, and that was a really cool place to have it. The setup was amazing. The arena, the amount of fans we had, and I still like to this day just remember having interactions with Kevin and Aaron and Scott Rook and those guys like on the water, because when the fog lifted, there they were. I thought I was out there on this giant stump flat by myself, and then all of a sudden there's like 3 or 4 of us out there, and we all end up pretty much finishing in the top 5.
Yeah. and that was it either day, I think it was day 2, you guys were like basically trading blows on giants, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like day 1 was like just kind of the tip of the iceberg, and then every day after that it just got better and better. And I think by day 4 it was just ridiculous. We had the perfect storm of conditions, right? We had a north wind. It was abnormally cold all winter long down there. The water was low, and the week of the tournament it went from like highs in the 40s to highs in the 70s, and no wind or little light south wind. And so it pushed all the water back in. So the water was rising. It was warming up so fast that you could literally see the grass growing taller every single day on your graph.
That's insane.
It was mind blowing. Like I'd never seen that. Every day you'd show up and the grass would be like a little bit taller off the bottom. And it just like kept following the water levels up higher and higher. And it went from like being able to see every single stump with your eyes to none of them. But when that happened, it was like every giant bass that lived within 10 miles of there swam right to us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll probably never see that again ever. That's one of those weeks where everything lines up, where you see that. That's the weeks where Rojas broke the record. Like Mother Nature lines everything up, and we just happen to land right on top of it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now it's kind of funny we talk about Mother Nature, and we can spin around and go to last year's Elite Series event, and she threw a curveball at you guys every single tournament, it seems.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's just one of those things you just have to deal with. Like, I mean, it was like every single event you'd be like, are you kidding me? Again, it'd be like sunny and 75, no wind, day of the tournament or day before the tournament, monsoon, hurricane, tornado warning. Like, it didn't matter. Snow, sleet.
8 feet.
Yeah, it was insane.
Open up the weather app on your phone. You're like, this has to be a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the weather look like next week? Son of a again.
Yep.
Yeah. So awesome. I really want to break into our segments here, but Joe's got me curious, and he put in the comments. Joe Barber mentioned have Brandon talk about his bargain bin baits from that event. Said he loves that part of the story.
Oh yeah, Joe's such a student of the game.
Yeah, he is.
He knows all the backstories. So what he's referring to is right. This shows like how green I was. I was at one of our local tackle shops up here, and I was buying some tackle for the event because, well, I didn't have any sponsors to get product from, so I was just buying my tackle. And in the bargain bin at one of the tackle shops was this old Bandit 100, and the color was Louisiana shad. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm going to Louisiana, so obviously, yeah, like that's got to be the color, right? And that's nearly what I caught every single bass on down there was this $1 crankbait that I bought in a bargain bin that I had like 2 or 3 of. And it was just crazy, like how well they ate it. But I mean, it literally,
it's like, a sign.
Whether or not a shad actually looks like that in Louisiana, I don't know. But it was a great color, and it caught them really well. But then again, they probably would have eaten just about anything that bounced off a tree at that point.
Yeah.
Now my next question, like relating to that, when you got home, how many more Louisiana shad Bandit 100s did you buy?
None. You couldn't find any. Obviously, they were like,
well, you never know.
Closeout.
So you never know.
Discontinued. Yeah.
Like some people are scour the internet for days just to find more of them. So.
Yeah, they all went from the bargain bins and all the retail shops back to
full
the
price.
End caps, full price.
Yeah. And gone.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So breaking into talking about being versatile as an angler, I remember after you had your 5th win, you said that one of the things you were most proud of was having all 5 of your wins were doing 5 different things. And I found that, and it resonated with me, and it kind of stuck with the fact that doing 5 different things, it shows how crucial it can be being a versatile angler and where the benefits can lie. And kind of to start out with that, I'm curious if that is something that just came natural to you, because I'm not experienced. I don't know what the fishing is like in Idaho where you get the chance or the opportunity to kind of do different things to get you prepared to go on to that next level, or if it's something that, you put in the time in different regions and doing different techniques, trying different patterns, things along those lines.
I mean, it's really just tens of thousands of hours of time on the water, and research over and over again. And a lot of it does come from where I grew up. Our lakes in the springtime, we get a bunch of snow melt as soon as it starts to warm up. The rivers flood. They're dirty. You can see maybe 6 inches of visibility, and it's flooded, flipping spinner bait and cranking, like the stuff that I really love to do. And by the time summer rolls around and fall rolls around, you can see 20, 25 foot of visibility. It's clear. We got grass and rock and wood. I mean, we nearly have everything you can imagine. And our water temps will get into the 80s maybe in the summer, which isn't super hot, but then it goes all the way down into 37, 38 in the wintertime. But our bigger lakes don't freeze over, so we can fish for those fish in those super cold temperatures as well. So you learn a lot of these different techniques. And I think one of the biggest keys to that is that our seasons are, or they're all condensed down, and everything changes so much faster because those fish are moving through. You look at places that are even colder than where we're at, like Minnesota and things like that, where they get feet of ice over their lakes. Those fish are constantly moving and transitioning. And I think that plays a big role as an angler when you go to bodies of water and you have years like this year where every single event, some crazy, weather condition was thrown at us, some changing condition. And you just learn, even if you're not purposefully learning that in the moment, it just becomes part of how you compete as an angler. And I've always said, like, the guy whose light bulb goes off the quickest is the guy that wins that day, right? We're all given 8 hours to compete on the water, and the guy that clicks and puts that math problem together the quickest, and figures out the answer, is the guy that's going to win that day. And you just have to constantly do that. And so the more scenarios you've seen and more situations you've seen, the quicker you're able to move through that and work out those problems and be able to figure out exactly what you need to do.
Right.
It sounds like it's trust your gut. Always trust your gut.
It is. Fish with your limbic brain is what I'd like to say.
Love it.
Well, for folks like myself who have a simple brain, please expand upon what this limbic brain means.
Well, everybody has a limbic brain. So the limbic brain is what controls your gut feeling. It doesn't actually come from your gut. It comes from your limbic brain, which controls most of your emotions and your behaviors. And believe I'm not a neuroscientist, so this is just stuff that I have read because I like to learn on stuff like this. And then I take it and I apply it to fishing and somehow. But it's those gut feelings that you get, right? And a lot of that comes from experiences. And when you use that, and then you have the other part of your brain, which is your upper brain, is your neocortex. And that is what controls like our speech and our critical thinking. And so you have to balance those two things. So you're like processing the information, but then also it's like that is what's telling your limbic brain, like, hey, maybe you should go do that. So I've always thought, like, if you're driving down the lake and you look at something twice, you might as well just pull over and fish it, because there's something telling you to go do that. So it's like you have to, there's always a reason why you're thinking about something. And the older I've got, the more I've just let myself go do that, because it may take me 10 minutes and I may be able to eliminate that technique or that area, or it may lead me down the road to a really good finish or a win.
Brandon Palanik, a full-time fisherman and part-time neuroscientist.
No, not at all. I just happen to read some books every now and then to talk about it.
I think we should call him Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Palanik.
Not even close.
So to kind of put it, like, give a scenario here. So, like, take a guy, kind of like how yourself getting into the nation and qualifying for the elites, coming from Idaho, the northwestern region. Take a guy who's been in one region his entire life, hasn't really gotten the chance to travel out, thinks he's got, has the skills to make it, and then, embarks on that journey, right? I mean, what kind of advice do you have for somebody that knows that they're going to have to learn completely different, walks of fishing that they've never had the opportunity to even try in their region?
A bass is a bass. Doesn't matter where it lives. Now that bass may live slightly different based on its type of available cover or forage base. But when you strip it down to the most basic sense, like a bass lives a very, very simple life. It's just really complicating to us because our entire lives are based off of a 24-hour day and a 365-day calendar. And a bass doesn't care what day it is. They don't schedule their next phone call or their next podcast. They just live whatever condition they're based off of, right? And so you do this research and you kind of get an idea. And I get this question all the time of like, hey, I've got this tournament coming up on Lake X on this date. And the first thing I tell everybody is, look, you can do all the research you want, but all that matters is what's happening that week, or that day. Because the reality of it is, say the tournament's December 10th, 2021. Nobody on this planet has ever fished any body of water December. I don't even remember what day I said now. Any day in December in 2021. It hasn't happened. It's not possible. And so nobody knows exactly what's going to happen that day. And when you think about it that way, it really opens up your mind to paying attention to what's happening that day or that week. You can use past experiences to kind of guide you in a direction, but not getting caught up in that doc talk and like what you should be doing on a specific body of water will open up a lot of times the way that you're able to win an event, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time an event is one doing something off the beaten path, whether it's an area or a technique or, a completely different depth range from what the general population of people and fish are at.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a select few that can adapt quickly to different techniques or patterns and from different regions like that they've never been to before. But I think there's definitely something like a correlation between folks that try to force a certain technique, like you mentioned, that should be happening, right? And they force it too much that it ends up hurting them and they don't end up cashing the check. I think you find that often, whereas like you said, if they just fish the moment and a bass is a bass, they probably would have fished their confidence and would have been fine.
But one of my favorite sayings that I got from the guy that got me started is he'd always say it like somewhat jokingly, but it actually was serious. He'd always tell me, they're going to be where you find them. And you're like, at first you're like, well, duh, obviously. Right? but when you take a step back and you think about it, it was really meant to say that same thing, right? Of like not trying to force a technique or an area and like, having confidence in your abilities, I think is one of the first things. Like once you have confidence in your ability to catch a bass, then when you're not catching them, you're like, well, obviously they're not here, right? But I see too many guys think that the bait or the area that they're in is better than their ability to catch a bass, right? And so they keep trying to force something like, oh, I should be flipping, like that's what I should be doing. You're not getting bit flipping, like maybe you need to move off the bank, like it doesn't take that long to figure out if you should be getting bit or not. So I've always laughed at that, but it's always been in the back of my mind, especially when I'm practicing, to just continually move and try to find new fish.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But at first you're like, well, duh.
Like you don't have anything
Captain
better
Obvious.
to say. Like, yeah.
Here's a good question from Tony here, and he says, "So how long do you try what you know before you switch it up?"
Well, this is the thing I love and hate about bass fishing. There's no black and white answer, right? I can't say 5 minutes here, you're done, change it up. I think the biggest thing is that now with the electronics we have, you have the ability to see if there is some sort of life form happening under the water, right? And if you're up shallow, say you're flipping mats, if you hear, bluegill and baitfish and bugs and stuff popping in the mats and all of that, there's life happening there. So odds are there's some bass. If you're offshore and you're seeing fish around and you're marking fish, then odds are you've got the location right. You just may need to change your angle or the bait that you're throwing at them. And so that's how I judge it, is if I feel like I'm around fish and I'm seeing fish, or like around a life form, I just need to figure out how to get bit. If I feel like that area I'm in is just void of life, then I try to move. And sometimes in a tournament, even if you're finding fish, you have to realize that those fish may not be big enough, and you need to continually look for where those larger fish are living.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good point. We have Brian here. I have no idea what lakes these are, but he's asking if you like Lake CDA, or I don't even know how to pronounce that more. I'm assuming these are Idaho lakes.
They are. They're my two home lakes. So CDA is Coeur d'Alene. It's Coeur d'Alene Lake. And then the other one is Pond Oreille.
Pond Oreille. I would have never gotten that.
They're French names. So like Coeur d'Alene is COUER space D apostrophe capital ALENE. So it looks really weird.
It has giant smallmouth and largemouth in it.
It does. It does have. Yeah, it took. The last fall tournament took 23 and change to win, and he had a 7.5 pound largemouth. Oh. And then this spring there was like a 32 and almost a 34 pound bag.
Good
weighed in with 9 pounders, and those are straight northern largemouth. Those aren't Florida string.
That's
insane. It's pretty insane. But yes, I mean, do I like those lakes? Which one do I like more? I don't know. I probably like Coeur d'Alene a little bit more. It's a little bit more versatile. But Pond Oreille is probably one of the most beautiful lakes in the entire country, and it's over 1,000 feet deep, which is pretty dang cool.
Is that the submarine lake?
Yeah,
that's
They used to have a naval base there, which they still have some there, but did like submarine testing and everything there.
That's wicked. I think I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was Kyle that was telling me about that. That's where they do all the testing for the submarine. That's wicked. So my last question for you in terms of versatility, unless Andy has something here before we kind of break into branding, is out of your 5 different wins, is there one that really stands out to you? Like maybe one that you're more proud of than the rest?
I'm equally proud of all of them. They all seem to have come at just the right moment in my career. Like when I needed it the most is when it happened. And they all are super cool for their own reasons. Like my first one at Bull Shoals, it was awesome. 1, because it was my first. 2, because that was the first time that everyone was kind of able to see me go off the beaten path and do something completely different from the rest of the field, where everybody else is fishing less than 4 foot of water and I'm not fishing deeper than 14 foot of water. And it was like, that was one of the weeks that it was easy, and that doesn't happen very often, but that week it was easy. And like the second one was really cool because I'd been DQ'd at the Mississippi River We go to the St. Lawrence River. I jokingly say, like, I guess I'll just have to win the next one. And then I end up winning that one. Right. And I do it running nearly 1,000 miles over 4 days. And like, so that had like a different meaning to it. And then I didn't win for quite a while. And then won at Rayburn, which was, kind of a different type of fishing. That was another offshore event. And at that time, I felt like people had kind of like forgot that I won a largemouth event, and everyone thought that I could just catch smallmouth. And so that was special. And then the last two in 2020 were special just because coming back to bass. Champlain has always been a place that's like hit or miss for me. So it was amazing to win there. The final day was incredible. And then Santee Cooper was probably like the one that I felt like was the most out of what I was known for, because it was like a shallow water, dirty swamp. And, a lot of my other events have been won offshore, right? Like 2 smallmouth events offshore, 2 largemouth events offshore. And then to win one where, majority of my weight came punching, really is how I got most of my big ones, was super cool, because that's one of my favorite techniques. And I've had really good success with it, but I've just never like been able to do it and have a good enough event where I got that TV time. And in my mind, there's not a more fun way to catch them.
Likes the big stick the most, eh?
Yes.
Who would have thought?
We have
I love it.
We have a good question here from Christopher. I can't pronounce your last name, but I apologize.
It looks like Sawzak.
It looks like a Polish name, but yeah, he said, could you please go over your triangle theory for finding good locations?
Oh gosh.
You're asking that's a lot of theories.
Diving deep.
That's like an hour and a half long podcast in itself. So I'll keep it very, very brief. Yeah, very condensed version. But the whole triangle theory is a theory that I got from a guy back here in the Northwest that used to have a TV show, and his whole thing was just catching giant fish. Like, didn't matter what species it was, giant walleye, giant largemouth pike, salmon, trout, whatever. He always just went and caught big ones. And what he figured out is that he would start looking at the places that he caught them and comparing contour lines of these places and the times of year that he caught these fish. And he realized that you could pretty much draw a triangle on these locations where these fish would live. And they were using the contour lines as their travel routes, just like we use our highways. And that's how they were traveling. And everything was based off of seasonal movements, and the base was your spawn, because we know all fish are going to spawn at least one time a year, and you use that as your base. That's where your contour lines are wider and more spread apart. It's where your triangle is wider. And then you would find places where those contour lines would lead out and they would tighten up, and that would be where your triangle tightens up, and that's the point of your triangle. And so on opposite ends of the spawn, right, or extreme conditions, so summertime when it's super hot, or winter when it's really cold, those fish want to be able to move up and down vertically in the water column without having to swim very far horizontally when you have those extreme conditions, temperature wise. And I've used that every single day that I'm on the water trying to find bass. I don't do it like consciously now, like where I look and I'd actually like draw like triangles out. But when I'm looking, places look good to me because of that theory, and different times of year. And the cool thing is that most of the time when you figure out what part of the triangle they're in, you can look at other similar places, and I'll run to a creek and I'll only fish that section of the triangle, because that's where the general population of the bigger fish are at.
That's wicked cool. I've never kind of put it in
patterning the
perspective
pattern.
like that. Yeah. Andy, have you ever kind of put it in perspective like that?
So I won't say in a triangle theory, but the first thing I always do when I study a new map is try to find those wide contour lines to figure out where the spawning flats would be based on no matter what time of year I go there, and then grow out to the contour lines. So as soon as you
Yep.
start, like if it's deep summer pattern, I want to fish deep or try deep, I'll look for those close condensed lines to find that depth change with a flat close to it. So I've never used the triangle theory, but it's all about reading contours and knowing where that highway is. So I have used that quite a bit, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely something to put into perspective, especially season by season too. So finally breaking into branding in the fishing industry, and I kind of want to put on the premise this question. The first question for you. This is on the premise that I think now more than ever there are a lot of people very successful in the fishing industry that aren't successful tournament anglers. And that, with that being said, my first question for you: would you agree that now more than ever it is important to make your brand, like your personal brand, a focal point of attention in the fishing industry if you're trying to be successful?
Oh, I mean, yes, is the short answer. The tricky thing is that you run your fishing as a business, but your brand is your personal self, right? And you have to balance those things, and that can be tricky sometimes. I would say the biggest thing is that whether you're a tournament angler, whether you're on YouTube or podcasting or whatever, like you have to have a brand and stay true to that. And then because we're, individuals most of the time, we are our own brand. And so staying true to yourself is like the best way to do it. And it's going to give you the most longevity. And you have to have that so that people can resonate with it. You know, but then you also have to have the branding standpoint of it from a business side of it, that people have things that are recognizable, right? Like that could be a logo or a color scheme or a style or something. And it doesn't mean that those you can't change those things, but things that people can see over time and build that recognition with your brand.
Yeah. And this is, something that I've honestly been pretty excited to chat with you about, because I think, genuinely that you're one of the best in the game, if not the best at, building your brand on the water and off the water, kind of like you just explained. And with that being said, for somebody that has the fishing skills, and I think there's a lot of great examples out there today of folks that have the fishing skills on the water, but maybe kind of lack either the savviness or the knowledge to start building their brand from a business front, which I think, like we just mentioned, is imperative now. What are some kind of starting steps for them to kind of get that business side rolling beyond just hiring somebody to take care of it for them?
I mean, the biggest thing is that you have to have a want to do it, like a will to do that, because it's extra work. And that's where guys most of the time fall short, right? Is that they just want to fish, but they don't want to put in the extra work off of the water. And so the guys that are really successful building a brand or building sponsor relationships, you only see 10 to 20% of what actually goes on. What you see on social or out there in magazines and all that, like that's just such a small portion of the conversations and the work that goes on behind the scenes. And so it takes a lot of time to do that. And I think when guys are starting, especially if they're younger guys coming in, the biggest thing is just staying true to who you are, because if you don't, you will get burnt out and it'll start to feel like a job. And none of us got in the fishing industry because we wanted to work a job. We all got in the fishing industry to try to get away from our jobs.
Guilty.
And he's like, yep, that's me.
No, it's funny. In August, I did quit my job. I became a full-time guide on Lake Erie out of Buffalo. And I also do some steelhead stuff. So a little side note there. I got out of my cubicle and full-time fish now. So it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, and I mean, if you can do that and you can say it's fun because you're doing it in a way that you're still able to enjoy it.
Yes.
And that's why I say you have to have the will or the want to build that branding and that business side also, or else it's just going to feel like a job.
Yep.
And I guess I was fortunate that I enjoy that side of it. I enjoyed not only like building my own brand, but I feel like as I do that, it reaches a bigger, broader audience of people that also then grows the sport. And like, that's the root cause of all of that, is trying to bring more eyeballs to the sport. Like, I came into an era where I always felt like I wanted to try to make bass fishing look really cool, because
Definitely done that.
Like when I was growing up, there wasn't high school fishing, there wasn't college fishing. It's like you didn't really talk about it in school.
Right.
A lot of people didn't know that I fished tournaments until like probably like later in high school, when I started dragging my boat to school.
Yeah.
And and then just leaving from school and going to the lake. But then it kind of became cool.
Right.
After that, and then obviously when you're in high school and people see that you win money catching fish, then they think it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So this whole kind of business side, the content creation has kind of always been a part of you. Then it's not like something where you kind of realized, it was like a moment where something clicked. It's just something that's been in you for almost your entire life.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. It wasn't ever something I felt like, oh, I need to do this so that I can build my brand. It was like, I'm going to do this because I also enjoy this. Like, I love building content that people look at and they go, how did that happen? Or like, how did they get that shot? That I enjoy that, not as much as catching a fish, but it gives like kind of that similar type of feeling. And I think, I was just fortunate enough that I enjoyed both sides of it. And so I think the biggest thing though is that I've learned is, especially when you start talking like sponsorship wise, is aligning yourself with products that you believe in and people that you believe in. Because sometimes there can be a really good product, but the people there are not enjoyable to work with, and it just makes it miserable. Or every single time you have to talk to those people, or negotiations come up, it's just hard. I would rather build friendships, and then the money and the business side of it is just a byproduct of this enjoyable experience we're having together. Like,
Yeah.
we're both going to sell products, and we're going to build the brand, we're going to build content. And I want to be able to like call people up on the phone or shoot them a text, give them a hard time about something. But you can only do that if you're working with people that like have a shared, sense of values with you, and kind of a same approach to business.
Yeah. Not focusing on what you're receiving, but more focusing on the importance of a two-way street versus what are they going to do for you.
100%.
You're building a relationship, a friendship.
Yeah. It's no different, than like a friendship or relationship with your girlfriend or wife or anything, like even your parents. Like, if it's a one-way street, it's short-lived, right? Someone's going to be unhappy. And catching bass is hard enough that you don't need to make the other stuff any harder.
Right.
Fair enough. It's a very fair point.
Like we are in a losing game. Like everyone needs to know that. Like
We
if you
gamble.
if you come into bass fishing, know that you are going to lose more than you're going to win. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who you are. Kevin Van Dam, all-time winningest angler in bass fishing history, has lost way more than he's ever won.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. So if you're going to get your teeth kicked in all the time, you better find a way to enjoy it.
You better have some good friends.
Yes, exactly. You need good friends and sponsors to pick you up when you're down.
That's good. Well, we have a couple. We're gonna start wrapping this up in a few minutes here, and we got a couple fun questions here for you. But Andy, do you have any questions left for Brandon? Pretending to kind of Brandon.
I kind of want to see what some of the viewers put in here to see, and then kind of follow up on some of them. So, I mean, all the points have been great, but I'm sure I'll find something to run off of here shortly.
Joe here's asking if you've ever pulled a Tom Brady and taken some pay cuts to stay with a certain brand or to keep a relationship.
Diving deep.
Yeah, I have. I've taken pay cuts to stay with certain brands. You know, when maybe a different company I was working with said I couldn't be with this company if I wanted to be with them, and I'll just say see you later. I've turned down big money deals because I didn't feel like the business model lined up right. You know, I mean, I've walked away from quite a bit of money because what I realized, thankfully, early on was that money was never my driving force. You know, and I think that's why, I mean, I'm not going to go down this road, but like, that's why I came back to bass, right? It was because when none of us got in this game to be rich, right? We all got into it because we love it. And so if you do deals based on money, then you feel like a sellout, and nobody is wired to be a sellout, right? Mm-hmm. And like, I just can't live that way. So I would rather take deals that are less money with people that I enjoy, and you know, rather than take the next deal that's going to pay me more, right? There's something to be said for some loyalty and having that credibility, right? If you're just jumping a different brand every single year, then it's really difficult to say like, oh, this is my favorite lure, and then this is my favorite lure.
Lose credibility.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll say like there's often times that it's out of an angler's control, right? Like companies get bought, cuts get made, things like that happen. So it's not always the angler's choice when that happens. But yes, I've definitely turned down some money, but it is every single time it is worth it. And the flip side of it is I have taken deals that I, you know, in my gut, in my limbic brain, were like, nah, you probably shouldn't do that. But I'm like, man, that's some pretty good money. I got some house payments I need to make. And you do them, and every single time I do it, I regret it the entire year. Like every time I have to build content or something, like it just feels forced, and I don't like it. And you know, they usually end up lasting not very long.
Well, I think that goes back to your point of kind of just following the path of positivity and, you know, making those right relationships work. So
staying true to yourself as opposed to trying to be a people pleaser.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna hit you with a couple questions to wrap things up. More kind of fun questions, and I got two, unless Andrew's got something for you. And the first one is kind of business oriented. It really comes from our buddy John King, who texted me today to ask you this.
Okay.
Andy's already dropping his head.
Like John King has some of the wildest questions, so I'm going to apologize in advance because I don't know what's coming here. He's a great dude, but he's just wild. Like, I love it.
It's nothing bad. It actually honestly more made me laugh, and it might honestly be more geared towards towards Kyle, if anything, with his snacking. But do you have any ice cream non-endemics in the works for sponsors next year?
No, I don't have any in the works. I have some ideas. I've got some really great pitches. So if anyone has a connection to an ice cream brand, preferably a national brand, so that it would be more readily available to people. But we have had discussions internally within the BMP fishing team, but no discussions with any ice cream brands. But we are willing.
So I guess a good question from here is, I know you do the cut day ice cream if you make the cut, but what happens if you don't make a cut? What do you do then? And then what is your favorite ice cream? Like, what is your staple go-to and your favorite ice cream joint that you have been to across the country? So I guess it's a 3-part question.
If you don't make the cut, you just don't get ice cream. I mean, it just doesn't happen. And they've tried to talk me into it, and I just have to put my foot down and be like, nope.
Like, I guess, would you like go for like an ultra marathon when you're done with that day? Like, why did I suck so bad? Like, let's go for a 20-mile run, or?
There have been many occasions when I suck on a body of water when I felt like I really should have caught him, that I do literally get back to the camper and just go run. But 9 times out of 10, I catch them way better the second day when I do that.
Yeah.
And it's not a punishment thing. I go to run to like clear my head.
PMA type deal, positive mental attitude. Got it.
Makes a huge difference. And so they like, I got up at 4 o'clock this morning. I just woke up and like, I need to go run. So I went and ran this morning when it was dark. But I felt better the entire day versus when I don't. And so my favorite ice cream is generally some sort of like chocolate peanut butter combination. That's generally my go-to. But not chocolate ice cream. It has to be like those things with vanilla ice cream or like a cake batter ice cream or something. I'm not really a chocolate ice cream fan.
So you like peanut butter with like chocolate chunks in it, is basically what you're saying.
Something, along those lines.
Got it.
I mean, like if we go to Dairy Queen, it's a mini DQ Blizzard with Reese's in it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's my go-to.
Money.
Kyle will get like, he'll get like brownie batter ice cream with gummy worms and like mint chocolate chips or something weird.
Like
I will
say,
terrible. Terrible.
I will say at the Classic this last year, we were up for each day working at Gunpowder. We were up at like 2:30 in the morning to get the Weather Channel to the launch. I have never in my life seen one man drink so many Black Rifle coffee cans in my life than Kyle each morning. That I actually went up to him and I was like, "Are you okay? Like, I'm kind of concerned for your health right now. Like, your heart's gonna beat through your chest after the 6th can in an hour span." Like,
mind blowing that any of his footage is stable at all.
Exactly.
For sure.
There was an earthquake.
But there this year at the Classic was probably some of the best ice cream we had this entire year. Gosh, what was it called? Creamistry or something like that. It was that nitro ice cream that they make.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I just looked on Google Maps and was looking for a place close to downtown that I could park my boat and truck that had a big enough parking lot. And that place came up. And so we went in there with like almost 20 people. And that stuff was legit. Knoxville was super good. St. Lawrence River had really good place. I can't remember the names of all these places. And then we have a couple really legit ones at our house. There's one called Annie's Ice Cream. She actually brought ice cream to our wedding this summer because we had cut ice cream at our wedding.
Congrats, by the way.
Thanks. Tiff made the cut. So it was
love it.
She had really good ice cream.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, some good ones.
Well, Andy, you got any questions left for Brandon before we hit him with the last one?
You can hit him with the home run.
All right. So everyone that's new to the show, we always give this question out. It's one that takes a lot of different routes for different folks, so it's fun. It's one that's
Different facial expressions. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And so if you could sit down, and I don't know your beverage of choice, if you like a whiskey or a beer or anything, but
ice cream.
Or if you could sit down and we're gonna change it up. If you could sit down and have a nitro ice cream with 3 different individuals, they do not have to be fishing industry. They can be alive currently or 1,000 years ago. It doesn't matter. Your options are limitless. Sit down with 3 different folks, have an ice cream, and pick their brain. Who are you gonna invite?
Aaron Martins, Matthew McConaughey, because I read his Green Lights book and it was awesome. And the conversation between those 2 individuals alone would be quite entertaining.
I wonder who would talk more, Aaron or Matthew McConaughey.
Depends on the subject.
Yeah, it's true.
I guess. And then maybe like George Washington. Like someone from like early on, like when the United States was like first becoming a thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to talk to someone, that was like in power, wouldn't necessarily have to be him, but that's just to throw an example out there.
Mm-hmm.
But someone early on from like when the US was getting started and like what their ideology was of what they saw the country becoming.
Have them look at it now and see how different or similar it was to it.
I wouldn't do that to them. I wouldn't do that to them.
I was like, I wonder how many people would be like hit with like the belt or like just slap. Like, what are you doing? Like, it just, and we shouldn't dive down
a lot
road, no. But yeah.
I've actually, it's funny you say, I've been meaning to buy McConaughey's book and read that after, I don't know if you listened to his episode with Joe Rogan, but that was one of my all-time favorites of Joe's episodes, just from a mental thinking process of McConaughey.
The book is awesome. And to Joe LaBarbera's question about turning deals down, he had like the ultimate move on that one and was like turning down $14 million offers for movie deals. And he's like, no. I'm not going to ruin the book for you, but it is a super cool book.
I'm going to have to buy that as soon as we get offline here.
Yeah.
We might have just had some McConaughey book sales from this episode. But dude, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time out tonight. And hopefully the windstorm passes without any damage to you or your home.
We've made it this long. The lights are still on. No trees have fallen through my camper or my house or my shop. So
knock on wood. Yeah, I feel like you guys have had like a barrage of western storms recently up there in the Pacific Northwest. Like the last month or so, right? It's been like storm after storm.
We've had some crazy ones. Like we've had a few hailstorms. I mean, the good thing is like in the grand scheme of things, we don't really have any weather that's going to kill us. Like unless you crash in the snow or something. Like we don't have hurricanes or tornadoes or any of that. So we're pretty lucky.
Yeah. So, dude, seriously, thank you so much for taking the time out. We really appreciate you hopping on here and dropping a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looking forward to the next one.
Best of luck in 2022, man.
Thank you.
Amen. Yeah. We'll be talking to you. Take care, Brandon.
You have a good one. I love this comment right here. All right.
You said Matthew McConaughey, and that's the first thing that I thought of. I
love Matthew McConaughey. He's so good. Like every time I see this is a Buick commercial I think he's in or something, and I'm just like, oh God. It just gets stuck in my head.
He's a big Texas Longhorns fan.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about him until last year. I saw I think it was Texas or ESPN was posting something about McConaughey at a Texas Longhorns game. But I'm happy he said that because McConaughey's been somebody I've always been intrigued by. Like every Joe Rogan episode with him, I've probably watched 5 times over just to really receive all the information because but kind of like what Brandon was getting into, talking about that mental process of going down the path of positivity. Like he's very similarly track-minded.
Yeah.
And a lot of those folks really intrigue me, pique my interest, and I like to receive as much information as possible. So
yeah,
dude, this is a show that I've been looking forward to getting set up for a long time, as you know, because I don't like. I've told Andrew this all the time, and I've gotten to talk to a lot of cool people and meet a lot of cool people in my short time, working in the fishing industry, maybe a year and a half or so. And Brandon's like the only person I've ever been somewhat like starstruck by, just because I've looked up to him for a while.
Enamored. I think we could all say that we're a little enamored by BP, because just like the presence he brings to the situation. He's it's virtually our age too. He's a little older than us, so it's just incredible.
Yeah, and it was funny earlier, when I called him a veteran, you could see him chuckle a little bit, but he even says it in his Instagram bio, like he has 10 classic qualifiers. Like he's been in the industry, he's been in the game for a while. He is a veteran when it comes to professional fishing, but kind of watching his route, when he went through the nation and watching him make his way through, establish himself. And then one thing I was just really inspired by, and a lot of it was due tonight, it's just where he's been successful, how he's been successful, and how he carries himself through success and through failure. That's just always something that's been inspiring to me. So I'd love to, keep up with him throughout his career. And tonight was pretty freaking awesome to get him on the show and pick his brain. And huge shout out to all you folks that tuned in tonight. Appreciate y'all coming through, and says a lot about his fan base for a lot of you guys coming in here. We got Pat and Joey going at it in the comments here.
I love this.
Good stuff. But for that, tonight was a really awesome show. I think a lot of
really
was. And I'm sure a lot of people will agree with the same.
Yeah, I'm actually probably I listen to some. I go back and listen to a lot of them, because we get to do this on a weekly basis, by twice a week, right? We get to talk to all these awesome people, but this might be the one I actually go back and re-listen to multiple times, because there was a lot of information and PMA dropped in this episode that I think everybody should tune in and listen to multiple times, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of things that people are going to miss. So, jeez, Pat.
We got to get Pat on a show coming up here soon. I've talked to Pat before about getting him on, and I failed at trying to schedule that. So, Pat, we'll get you on the show here soon. And Joe, hopefully Zaldane's coming on soon. I'm sure he has a Redfish Cup hangover currently. But we got some cool shows coming up in the works. I know, gosh, if I don't stop spilling stuff all over my desk here. I know next Monday, like a 90% chance, we're still in the works of confirming it. But we're getting Dean Rojas on next Monday Night Live. And at the end of the month for Monday Night Live, we have Mr. Josh Bertrand coming back to the show, I think, for the fourth or fifth time. We always enjoy when Josh makes his appearance. So we got some good shows coming up, a lot of good topics, and we highly encourage and appreciate when y'all guys throw out some topics that you want to hear discussed. And Andy, do we have I think we have a show lined up for this Friday.
Do we? I'm sure we do.
I think we're talking that late fall and a winter kind of phase. But guys, make sure you guys are tuning in to the YouTube channel.
Apple Podcasts. Leave a review, please. We appreciate it greatly. And
and our same thing, I think while he's here, Mr. Pat Renwick, make sure you guys go check out the Straycast channel. They have been a huge help in getting me through some of the 20-hour Texas drives, and they do a good job over there. And so thank you to Pat for tuning in tonight, man. That means a lot. They do Indian leg wrestling? No.
You want to wrestle, Zach? You want to wrestle?
That.
Come on, Zach. Let's go.
We'll incorporate it when we get a studio here in Buffalo.
Yes.
We got some good fishing videos coming up for you guys too on the channel, so look out for those. But Andy, any upcoming dates for folks that want to get on some Lake Erie smallmouth or steelhead?
So actually this Saturday for smallmouth is looking incredible. I think we have a southeast wind, I think right now, 5 to 8 on Saturday. That could change, but that might be one of the last days I actually get on the boat, unless somebody wants to steal that trip because money's money. But yeah, I want to get out on the big lake or at least the river one more time while it's still warm enough to chuck that crankbait around, because that's just been an absolute riot. But
Yeah,
it's a little muddy.
I haven't been out there when it's been dumb for the fall yet, so hopefully
Yeah,
we'll get a chance to do that and film for folks.
yeah, like we're getting around that point right now where it's just going to be silly for like the next 2 weeks if we can get out.
Right. Yeah. Well, folks, I think Andy, unless you got something else, we're gonna sign off here tonight.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and
yeah.
as always.
Yeah. And quick note, really fast before we sign off here. Adam has for the business from the Bass Boat episode has taken its month off here. Adam got set with his business stuff. He's making a comeback here, and he's getting Mr. Kurt Dove on Wednesday. So make sure you guys look forward to that. And after that, we'll see you guys on Friday's episode.